St. John is one of the most photographed islands in the Caribbean, a U.S. territory where turquoise water meets untouched rainforest, and where nearly 2/3 of the land has been protected as a national park. That's the version most people already know. What almost no one realizes until they try to get there is that St. John has no airport at all, no runway anywhere on the island. The only way in is a small ferry, and until you've crossed that narrow channel yourself, it's hard to believe a place this close to America could still be this hard to reach. That isolation hides something less visible than a missing runway. The same protection that has kept this island looking untouched for 70 years is, for some of its oldest families, starting to feel less like a gift and more like a question. So, who is really living on St. John today? What did this island have to give up to stay this beautiful? And what is the true price of a paradise this carefully preserved? To answer any of that, you first have to understand what this island actually is, not as a headline, but as a place you can stand on. St. John is small enough that you could walk from one end to the other in a single day, if the hills didn't fight you every step of the way. It is the smallest of the 3 main islands that make up the U.S. Virgin Islands, a sliver of land stretched long and narrow between the Caribbean Sea and the open Atlantic, barely a few miles wide at its broadest point. But numbers rarely explain what it actually feels like to arrive here. The crossing itself sets the tone before the island even properly begins. 20 unhurried minutes during which the water beneath the boat shifts from a churned harbor gray into something clearer, calmer, almost impossibly blue. When the ferry slows into Cruz Bay, the first thing that reaches you isn't the shape of the island on a map, it's that color, an almost impossible shade of blue-green that looks less like ocean and more like glass lit from underneath. Then comes the heat, thick and unhurried, folding itself around you the moment you step off the boat. The town itself is barely a town at all by mainland standards, a scatter of pastel buildings, a handful of streets, a harbor crowded with sailboats swaying gently against their moorings. And yet, it carries itself with the easy confidence of a place that knows exactly what it is. People call it Love City, and the name doesn't feel like marketing. It feels like something residents actually believe. Behind the town, the land rises sharply into forested hills, volcanic in origin, ridged and steep, dropping straight into the sea. There are no flat plains here, no easy geography. Every road bends around a hillside, every view opens suddenly, as though the island only reveals itself in fragments, never all at once. Drive that road briefly, and the scenery keeps rearranging itself. A curve reveals a hidden bay, another curve buries it again, behind a wall of green. And just when you think you've seen the whole island, one more rise in the road proves you wrong. Nothing here is laid out for easy viewing. You have to keep moving to earn the next glimpse. What strikes most visitors first isn't how big or small the island is, it's how complete the feeling of arrival is. Not just arriving at a destination, but arriving somewhere that runs on its own logic, its own pace, its own sense of time. You don't consult a map to understand St. John. You consult the way your shoulders start to drop, the way your voice instinctively gets quieter. That feeling of a place that rearranges you a little, simply by standing in it, is where every honest story about St. John has to begin. It's not a feeling geography alone can produce. It's the feeling of a place that has decided, on its own terms, exactly how much of itself it's willing to hand over on any given day. But that feeling of surrender to the island's pace has a source, and it isn't mysterious at all. On most islands, nature is scenery, something to admire from a boat, photograph at sunset, and then leave behind. On St. John, nature is closer to law. Well over half of this island's land, along with much of the water surrounding it, has been folded into a national park, meaning it cannot be built on, paved over, or sold off the way land elsewhere in the Caribbean so often is. That single fact invisibly governs almost everything else about how people live here. Certain sunscreens aren't allowed on the island because their chemicals bleach the coral reefs. Taking a handful of sand from a beach, or a shell, or a fragment of coral isn't just frowned upon, it is against the law. The reef is not decoration. It is infrastructure in the truest sense, the thing that keeps fish stocks alive, keeps the water clear, keeps the whole fragile system from unraveling. Even the waters just offshore, far beyond where any beach umbrella could reach, fall under the same federal protection as the land and underwater extension of the same idea, that some things here are simply not for sale. Even feeding one of the wild donkeys carries a fine, a reminder that kindness and interference aren't always the same thing. Visitors are told all of this within minutes of stepping off the ferry, not as a suggestion, but as a condition of being welcomed onto the island at all. Water works differently here too. There is no wide river cutting through St. John, no deep aquifer to rely on. Most homes catch their own rain, funneling it from the roof into a private cistern buried beneath the house, a personal reservoir that has to last until the next storm refills it. During the dry stretch of winter and early spring, when the rain thins out for months, residents watch their water levels the way people elsewhere might watch a bank balance. A long shower is not a luxury here, it is a withdrawal. This is what nature as law actually looks like in practice, not a postcard, but an unspoken, constant negotiation. People here don't plan their lives and then adjust for the weather. They plan around it from the very beginning, the same way you might plan around a strict but fair landlord who happens to own the entire island. And in that negotiation, something else takes shape, a patience outsiders often mistake for laziness, but which is really discipline. You don't fight a landscape like this. You listen to it, adapt to it, and eventually, if you stay long enough, it teaches you something about restraint the rest of the world seems to have forgotten. Because on an island, where the rain decides how long your shower can be, and the reef decides what you're allowed to put on your skin, nature isn't simply present in the background of daily life. It is quietly, patiently, in charge of it, and everyone who chooses to stay here has, in some understated way, agreed to answer to it. Living under that kind of authority sounds heavy in theory. In practice, it looks almost nothing like a burden. If you want to understand daily life on St. John, don't listen to anyone who tells you people here move slowly. That's a description, not a picture. The real picture is smaller and stranger, and far more specific. It's a wild donkey standing in the middle of a paved road at noon, utterly unbothered by the car waiting behind it, because the donkey was almost certainly here before the road was. Descended from animals brought over generations ago and long since left to roam free, these donkeys, along with deer that slip in and out of the tree line, have become such an ordinary part of the landscape that residents barely glance up when one wanders past a front yard. It's the way a pickup truck can stop in the middle of the road so the driver can lean out and greet someone he hasn't seen in a week. No one behind him honks. No one seems irritated. In a place this small, a greeting sometimes carries more weight than being 5 minutes late. It's the two very different rhythms of the island's two towns. In Cruz Bay, the harbor town nicknamed Love City, bars sit close enough to the water that you can watch the evening ferry come in while nursing a drink, and by early evening, locals, retirees who never left, sailors passing through, and tourists fresh off the boat all end up shoulder to shoulder at the same handful of counters. 8 miles away, on the mellower side of the island, Coral Bay barely qualifies as a town at all, a loose scatter of homes on the hills above a sheltered harbor, with no large supermarket, just a couple of small local markets carrying the everyday essentials. If you need a proper grocery run, you drive back over to Cruz Bay. Nobody complains about the inconvenience. It's simply understood as the cost of living somewhere this quiet. It's the open-air safari trucks that double as taxis, benches bolted into the truck bed, the driver calling out names of beaches like a bus conductor who's said the same words 1,000 times and still means them. It's a father teaching his kid to snorkel in ankle-deep water, while, 20 feet away, a family of tourists does the exact same thing. Both groups equally delighted, neither one aware the other finds this completely ordinary. It's the unwritten rule of the road. 2. If there's room in your car and someone needs a ride, you offer it, no questions asked. And it's the small formality visitors often miss entirely. Before you launch into whatever you need from someone, directions, a coffee order, a question about the ferry schedule, you say good morning or good day first. Skip that step, and you haven't just been impolite. You've revealed that you don't yet understand where you are. None of this is dramatic. None of it would make a postcard. But together, these are the details that separate a place people merely visit from a place people actually live. A wild donkey blocking traffic, a truck stopped for no reason but a hello. 2 towns with 2 different heartbeats, connected by a single road that takes about half an hour to drive end to end. This is the texture underneath the turquoise water, the part no brochure photographs. Because you can't photograph a rhythm, you can only notice it, slow down enough to feel it, and eventually understand that this, more than any beach, is what people mean when they say they live on St. John. After dark, away from Cruz Bay's streetlights, the sky over Coral Bay fills with more stars than most visitors have ever seen at once, and more than one resident will tell you they never really planned to stay, they just stayed one more night, then another, until the years added up. But staying is one thing. Belonging is another question entirely, and on St. John, it comes with its own set of rules. Ask someone on St. John where they're from, and you'll quickly learn the question has more than one layer. Some residents arrived recently drawn by the water, the quiet, the slower pace of life here. But many others carry a deeper claim to this place, one that goes back not years or decades, but centuries. Their family names trace directly to the people who were once brought here in chains, forced to work the sugar and cotton fields that once covered these same hillsides. On an island this small, that history isn't an abstraction taught in a classroom. It's a surname. It's a family plot of land, passed down so many times that no single person quite remembers when it first became theirs. It's a grandmother who can point to a specific hillside and tell you, without hesitation, that this is where your people have always been. Here, a name carries weight that goes beyond the person holding it. It belongs to a family, a bloodline, a stretch of land, and a set of stories handed down at kitchen tables for generations, long before anyone thought to write them into a guidebook. People sometimes describe themselves, with plain pride, as coming from families who were on this island before it was ever a tourist destination, before it was ever a national park, before anyone from the mainland had even heard of it. That distinction between those whose roots run that deep and everyone who came later matters enormously here, even if a visitor might never notice it. In a community this size, isolation doesn't push people apart. It pulls them closer together, almost out of necessity. When your nearest hospital, your best grocery store, and half your extended family are all a ferry ride away on a different island entirely, you learn quickly who you can actually count on close to home. Favors get returned. Names get remembered. A stranger's last name, dropped casually in conversation, might suddenly place them as the cousin of someone you've known your whole life. Church congregations that have met in the same small buildings for generations still gather every Sunday, often with 3 generations of one family in the same pew their grandparents once sat in. Children here grow up learning the island's history less from books than from porches sitting beside an aunt or a grandfather who remembers which hillside used to belong to which family, which name used to mean something different before the world discovered this place. It's an oral inheritance, passed down almost by accident, in the middle of ordinary conversation, and it means that even the youngest residents often carry a version of the island's memory that no outsider could ever purchase or fake. That dependence, repeated across generations, slowly hardens into something more permanent, not just community, but identity. To be truly from St. John is not simply to live here. It is to be woven into a family story that predates the resorts, the ferries, the very idea of this island as a destination. A story that started long before anyone called it paradise, and one that its oldest families are determined not to let disappear. One porch conversation, one shared name, one passed down acre at a time. That same inheritance, the one carried in a name, shows up just as clearly on a dinner plate. The food on St. John was never designed to impress a visitor. It was designed, centuries ago, to keep someone alive on very little. Under Danish colonial rule, enslaved workers on the island's plantations were issued a fixed weekly ration, cornmeal, and a handful of salted herring. That was often the entire allowance, no say in the matter, just enough to survive another week of labor in the cane fields. Out of that narrow ration, generations of women found a way to create something more than mere subsistence. They stewed the salted fish with whatever they could grow or gather, thickened it, seasoned it, and served it beside a dense, savory cornmeal dumpling. Today, that dish, fish and fungi, is considered the unofficial signature meal of the entire territory, ordered proudly in restaurants that didn't exist when the recipe was born out of necessity rather than choice. Alongside it sits the Johnny cake, a simple flatbread of fried cornmeal whose roots reach back even further, to the island's original Tainu inhabitants, long before Denmark or any European power ever laid claim to this land. It became, over centuries, a kind of edible, constant, cheap filling, portable enough that laborers once carried it with them through entire days of work, which is likely why some still call it a journey cake. And then there's callaloo, a dark, richly spiced stew built around leafy greens, okra, and whatever protein was on hand, its flavor carrying unmistakable echoes of West Africa, adapted over generations to whatever the Caribbean itself could provide. None of these dishes were built for photographs. They were built out of restriction, out of a ration book, a harsh climate, and a people determined to make something dignified out of very little. That history is exactly what gives the food its weight. It doesn't ask to be admired. It asks to be understood. Alongside it, a bittersweet local drink called maubi, brewed from tree bark and spices, gets passed around in plastic cups, an acquired taste visitors try once, and residents grew up drinking without a second thought. None of it was ever meant to travel beyond this island, and maybe that's exactly why it still tastes the way it does. What's the one dish from back home that you'd have the hardest time explaining to an outsider, the kind of food nobody else seems to quite get? Tell us in the comments below. That same thread, survival, transformed into celebration, runs directly into the island's biggest gathering of the year. What outsiders often mistake for a simple summer carnival is, underneath the steel drums and parade costumes, a commemoration of freedom itself. The festival marks the day slavery was formally abolished across the old Danish West Indies, and it deliberately builds toward a climax on America's own Independence Day, a pointed, almost poetic overlap on a piece of U.S. territory whose residents still cannot vote for the president of the country that governs them. For weeks leading up to that final day, the town fills with food stalls serving the same dishes born generations ago: fish and fungi, johnny cakes, curried goat, stewed conch, now cooked in the open air for anyone in line. Steel pan bands compete late into the night, each one trying to outplay the last. On open-air floors strung with lights, troops perform the quadrille, a formal, four-couple dance the islands inherited from 18th-century European ballrooms and quietly remade into something entirely their own. Dancers in bright madras cloth move through patterns called out by a floor master, the same borrowed steps that enslaved communities once practiced behind the backs of the plantation houses and later claimed outright as their own inheritance. Children stand at the edge of the floor, watching grandparents count out steps that have been counted on this same ground for longer than anyone dancing tonight can remember. And underneath all the color and rhythm runs something more serious: a community publicly, joyfully insisting on its own freedom, year after year, as though the celebration itself is a form of memory that refuses to fade. To eat this food and to stand in that crowd during the festival's final parade is to taste and witness something with very little to do with vacation. It is a living archive, proof that even the harshest history can be transformed, slowly and deliberately, into something a community chooses to celebrate rather than simply endure. A celebration this rooted in the past might suggest an island frozen in it. St. John does not reject the modern world. It has simply never let the modern world decide who it is. Fast internet reaches most of the island now. Cell service connects residents to the mainland instantly, and satellite connections have begun filling in the remaining gaps. Visitors arrive by the ferry load, spend their vacation dollars in local shops and restaurants, and post their photographs online within minutes. In every visible way, this is a connected, 21st century place. And yet, underneath that connectivity, the island's oldest instincts remain fully intact, instincts shaped by a history far heavier than most visitors ever learn about. 3 centuries ago, enslaved people on this same soil rose up against the plantation system that held them, seizing control of the island for months before the rebellion was ultimately crushed. The ruins of one of the sugar estates where that uprising unfolded still stand today, preserved inside the very park boundaries that now protect the island's beaches, a strange, uneasy coexistence between a monument to resistance and a landscape of leisure. 2 centuries later, an American businessman with a fortune built on oil purchased a large portion of that same land and donated it to the federal government, transforming St. John almost overnight from an overlooked outpost into one of the country's national parks. That single gift is the reason so much of the island still looks untouched today. No towering resorts crowding the shoreline, no parking lots swallowing the forest. But it also planted a tension that has never fully resolved. Land set aside, with good intentions, by an outsider of enormous wealth, on an island whose oldest families had already been shaping and working that same land for generations before he ever arrived. That tension is really the story of modernization on St. John. Not resistance to change, but a careful, ongoing negotiation over which changes are allowed to take root and which ones the island tactfully declines. Solar panels appear on rooftops without altering the skyline. New businesses open in Cruz Bay without erasing the older ones beside them. Young people who leave for college on the mainland often talk about coming back, not from obligation, but because nowhere else feels quite like home. The island absorbs what it needs from the modern world and firmly sets the rest aside, a discipline that, by now, feels less like caution and more like a form of self-respect. Stand at the edge of Cruz Bay at dusk, and you can watch both timelines exist at once. A cruise ship's distant lights blinking somewhere out past the harbor mouth, and closer in, a fisherman securing his line for the night, exactly the way his father did, on the same stretch of shore his family has always called their own. But that discipline, as admirable as it looks from the outside, has not come free. No place this beautiful comes without a cost, and on St. John, that cost has arrived in more than one form. The clearest of them fell from the sky in a single September, when two major hurricanes struck less than 2 weeks apart. The first stripped nearly every leaf from every tree on the island and toppled power lines across its length. The second, arriving before recovery had even properly begun, dumped feet of rain onto a landscape with no defenses left. The island's largest private employer, a beachfront resort that had operated for decades, closed its doors that year and has never reopened, taking hundreds of jobs with it. Longtime taxi drivers describe a livelihood that used to comfortably support a family now barely covering groceries, and many residents took on second and third jobs to keep a shaken tourism economy afloat. Even without a storm, simply living here carries a price most Americans elsewhere wouldn't recognize. Groceries, fuel, building materials, nearly everything has to be shipped in, and every leg of that journey adds to the final number on the receipt. Rent alone can swallow more than half of what a typical worker earns in a month, pushing many residents to share housing, move further from town, or scale down their expectations of what home should look like. Insurance premiums alone have pushed some homeowners to drop coverage entirely, gambling that the next storm will pass them by a bet that has already gone badly for some. And then, there is a subtler, slower-moving cost, one measured not in receipts but in acreage. The same national park that protects St. John's beaches from overdevelopment has, over the decades since its founding, gradually grown beyond the boundaries originally agreed to, leaving a shrinking share of private land for the families who trace their roots here the furthest back. At the same time, new arrivals from the mainland continue purchasing land and building homes at prices few longtime residents could ever compete with, pushing property taxes upward on land some families have held for generations. It is worth saying plainly that the people who manage the park did not set out to displace anyone, and most residents will tell you the protected land is a large part of why the island still feels like itself. But intention and outcome are not always the same thing, and many of the island's oldest families now find themselves negotiating a harder question than any hurricane ever posed. How much longer can you call a place home if the ground beneath you keeps slipping into someone else's hands? Recovery from that storm season came slowly and unevenly. Some beaches reopened within months, once park crews had cleared the underwater debris and inspected the moorings. Other stretches of coastline and the resort that once anchored the island's economy are still, years later, waiting on a rebuild that keeps getting delayed by insurance disputes and shifting ownership. Residents have grown used to that particular kind of limbo, watching a piece of their own economy sit half-finished, a daily reminder of how quickly the ground can shift beneath a place this small. None of this cancels out the beauty visitors come here to find, but it does complicate it, the way any honest place eventually complicates the story told about it. For the traveler, St. John can still feel very close to paradise. For the people who never leave, it is something more layered than that, a home that has to be defended, budgeted for, and occasionally renegotiated, year after year, storm after storm. Maybe what St. John leaves you with isn't a photograph at all. It's easy to remember the color of the water, the donkey standing in the road, the smell of fish and fungi from a roadside stall. Those images will stay with you. But underneath them sits a harder, more searching question, one this island seems to ask without ever raising its voice. What does it actually mean to protect a place? And who gets to decide what protection looks like? St. John was saved from the fate of so many Caribbean shorelines, the high-rises, the strip malls, the erasure of a coastline for convenience. That much is a genuine gift, but it was saved by decisions made largely by people who arrived from somewhere else, layered onto a history of survival and resistance that began long before any of them ever set foot on the island. Perhaps that is the real inheritance St. John offers anyone willing to look past the beach. Not simply a lesson in natural beauty, but a harder, more honest one, that even our best intentions toward a place can complicate the lives of the people who call it home, and that the truest way to honor a paradise like this one is never to stop asking who it was actually preserved for. If islands like this one are the ones you want to keep discovering, subscribe and follow along. There's a whole world still worth looking at closely.